This lady got this man to pay her $215,000 for unpaid domestic labor. I thought this would be a pretty interesting article to go over. So, a man in Spain has been ordered by a court to pay his ex wife $215,000 for 25 years of unpaid domestic labor. The record divorce settlement was calculated by Judge Laura Ruiz Alaminos based on the annual minimum wage throughout the couple's marriage, iNews reports. The man must also pay his ex wife, Ivana Moro, a monthly pension of $527, as well as $422 and $633 to his 20-year-old and 14-year-old daughters, respectively. Like, I can understand, like, paying your daughters to basically, like, take care of them when they're, like, under 18, but, like, even to the 20-year-old, that seems kind of interesting. Okay, so Morrow says she and her daughters were left with nothing when the couple who married in 1995 divorced in 2020. So clearly, this was a case of abuse to be completely excluded financially by her ex husband, with nothing left after my marriage ended, Morrow told iNews. Now that's a pretty odd situation because typically in almost every state, let's say in the United States, now this isn't the United States, this is in Spain, so the laws might be a little bit different, but pretty much in every state in the United States, it's usually always ruled in favor of the ex wife, typically. So me and my daughters were left with nothing after all these years of putting all my time, energy, and love in the family. I was supporting my husband in his work and in the family as a mother and a father. I was never allowed access to his financial affairs. Everything was in his name. Like, this is pretty much a sign that your marriage is like not going to work out, right? If there is so much secrecy in this type of situation, especially with finances, like that is an extremely controlling relationship. And not only that, typically, if there is such financial control like this, right, there's usually also some form of abuse, like physical abuse. Whew, man, that's pretty sad. Morrow was asked to sign a separation of goods agreement when she got married, meaning he would keep his wealth and they would split common possessions. The court in southern Spain's Velez Malaga heard that during the marriage, Morrow's ex husband, who is not named in the suit, built a successful gym business that allowed him to buy multiple luxury vehicles and an olive oil farm valued at 6.4 million. Now this is kind of interesting, right? Because typically, like usually, for example, like how a prenup works, right, which is I guess similar to what he got, which is the separation of goods agreement, is like pretty much everything before the marriage stays to the original person. So like let's say the husband, well, the person who's about to become the husband had like a net worth of like $10 million. The future wife has like a net worth of $1 million before getting into the marriage. They could keep both of those assets to themselves if they were to get divorced. Like they could keep those original amounts or the original accounts or whatever and keep that, separate. But typically everything that is like made within a marriage, everything earned within a marriage is typically split. So that's pretty interesting that they weren't awarded something more when they got divorced. She said she hoped her case would inspire other women to know that we can claim for housework when there is a separation of goods agreement. Now, I think the whole separation of goods agreement must have like some different wording in it than like a prenup because again, like she only got like 215,000 for 25 years. So Morrow's lawyer, Marta Fuentes told iNews, "The ruling represents the labor of all the women in these shadows who, without a doubt, constitute a fundamental support in personal, marital, and familiar terms during years and years, so that the ex-husband could develop his professional career and a rise in wealth which at the moment of separation could not share. So he could get on in his career. She stayed at home to look after the children, and they never contacted anyone to help her," Fuentes said. She was his shadow working behind him so he could rise professionally and become someone. Much has been said in recent years of the hidden toll of the mental load, that combination of cognitive and emotional labor, typically undertaken by women. The cognitive aspect of the mental load involves the scheduling, planning, and organizing required to support the smooth operating of families. This type of work ranges from organizing a play date to planning dinner. Liz Dean, Brendan Churchill, and Leah Rupanar explained in a piece for The Conversation last year. "We argue this cognitive work becomes a load, or the mental load, when it has an emotional element. For example, when there is worry or stress attached to these tasks." American sociologist Arlie Hochschild, meanwhile, has termed women's domestic labor done after work as the second shift. But the truth is that the mental load has no shifts. It can be done before, during, and after work, or even during a time that should be spent sleeping. Ultimately, the mental load is a mental health issue, and companies and governments should treat it as such. This will unburden families, and particularly mothers, from managing the mental load alone. Now, I'm not really going to say like who is right or wrong in this type of situation because I don't really know the legal terminology within like a separation of goods. Like, what is that all entailing? Because again, it's in Spain, so I don't really know anything about that. But if you were to get divorced, you should be giving some money to help support your kids and probably your ex-wife, depending on the situation. But yeah, it seems like it seems that basically his wife, well, his ex-wife, and his kids didn't get anything. Like his ex-wife is one thing, but like for his kids to not get like any money to like support them, because I'm assuming that the kids probably stayed with the mom after the divorce, seems pretty crazy to me. So if the labor laws in Spain are anything like here in America, that 215K is subject to income taxes in the federal and local level and self-employment taxes. That windfall just got a little bit smaller. The thing is, I don't think. Well, again, I don't know how Spain works, but if you win like a settlement or like a lawsuit, I'm pretty certain none of it gets taxed. If you have an agreement in place that she will not work, then she needs to be compensated. See, like, that's kind of like an interesting thing, right? It's like it makes the most sense if basically you were to get married and your partner basically stays at home, takes care of the household, takes care of the kids, etc., and they willingly do that, but they basically are your partner in crime in a sense, right? Your life partner, whatever. They're basically doing a lot of stuff, and you guys agreed, like, hey, this is your responsibilities in the marriage, this is my responsibilities in the marriage, and we're basically working together. It's like a teamwork kind of thing. Interesting. Avoid marriage. It is a legal contract that does nothing but expose you to risk, this person says. This is why no one wants to get married anymore. She should have received over $2 million. He kept his $6 million plus business. Never get married unless you will enjoy a three-way that includes the government. They are laying there right next to your spouse, just like an STD. They pop up when least expected and never really leave. This person says, I'm a man and disagree. She took care of the home for 25 years and then he decided to leave her and the kids with nothing and just move on. That's not fair. Like, see, that's the thing. That thing is kind of weird. Like, I think it's weird that they basically had like an agreement that she would take care of the household and the kids while he basically goes and does his business and make a lot of money, but she gets nothing. Like, she wasn't making an income that whole time. She wasn't like gathering skills or improving her career during that time. It was like a trade off, right? She traded her career basically to be a housewife and take care of the kids, and then basically got abandoned. And also, the guy basically abandoned his kids too, which is crazy. Interesting. Feel free to give your thoughts about this. The thing that really bothers me though isn't necessarily the like wife situation because that's like an iffy situation. I don't really know about that, but it seems really odd that a dad would just abandon his kids like that. That seems kind of crazy to me.